And brilliant. Hello, Dan. How you doing?
Yeah, good mate. You?
Yeah, really good, really good. So this is episode 2 of the Andrew Whitehouse and ADHD, or ADHD and Andrew Whitehouse podcast. Uh, for those of you listening, you're in good company. We had a whopping 21, maybe 25 listeners last time. So you really are, this is stadium gig material. This is, and Dan, Dan well, you might not know about this, but I used to be in a band, a wonderful little band called Lovelier that really never did anything, but I always felt should have done. And Dan, I was the singer and the bass player, and I wrote most of the songs, and Dan was the drummer. And it's kind of like, as a bass player, for me, bass players and drummers have got a thing going, I mean, Paul McCartney still uses Ringo, even now, they're both in their 80s. This guy's better than Ringo, and yeah, I'm not going to say, it was fun, wasn't it, Dan?
It was good. It was good fun. It's actually, I don't know if you know this, but it's actually 30 years this year since we first met. So it was 1994 that we first met in
And
your little record shop in Worcester. And you said, "Oh, I play the bass," and I said, "Oh, I play the drums." And you
really,
said, "I know a guitarist." So we got together in my garage, and we just made a load of noise for about 6 months, which was fantastic.
and that was just the three of us, wasn't it?
It was just the three of us at first. There were a few people that came and went. We had the world's worst trumpet player, if you
I
remember.
remember
He
him.
was, yeah, the Lurpak man, as we called him. Yeah,
Yeah,
he lasted. He lasted 2 hours.
yeah, I think I've still got a tape of him. Um, but you see, my memory of it is completely different. So my
Yeah.
memory was that I was already playing with the guitarist, and he was a guy called Alec Wood, who ultimately knobbed off with my girlfriend.
Yes, he did. Yes,
and,
that
and
was the basis of a few songs as well. I seem to remember.
yeah, sure was. Yeah, she was my
Yeah,
muse, or he was my muse.
yeah,
But anyway, but my recollection is he and I were playing with a guitarist in Bromsgrove, who
right.
was a bit of an old fogey, and we didn't like him very much. And he was mean to his cat. He was mean to his cat, this bloke. So what happened was we just carried on doing stuff, me and him together. And then
Yeah,
your brother, Russell, he
yes.
said, my brother's a drummer.
Ah, there you go.
And my recollection is we first met you at your garage where you had a studio set up.
Yeah.
And so that's my recollection. Because I remember
Ah,
with Alec driving up in the car, and I
yeah.
said, if he's rubbish, we'll keep him till we get someone better. And of course, you turned out to be blooming stunning, absolutely stunning drummer, and
You know what? It was great fun. I
it
think
was,
even from the outset, and when we were jamming, and you might have had some basis of songs, and I just
mm,
played along to it, and it was loud and lots of layers of bass and guitar, and then I
yeah,
tried to make the drums as interesting as possible. But it was great fun.
yeah, it was great fun. And it was a lot of, how can I put it? There was a lot of innovation, and the innovation came from, I don't know about the other three. I mean, ultimately there were four of us that became the solid sort of
Yeah,
nucleus of the band. There was me, you, there was Jason Childs, who's actually a real live rock star now, isn't he?
he
Uh,
is. Yeah, yeah,
with a
yeah,
band called National Milk Bar, and they're doing really well. Got a great album. And then there was a guy called Martin, who
yeah.
who doesn't speak to me for something we can't remember 26 years ago.
Yeah, I've no idea what happened there, but yeah, a
I
lot
don't,
of walking.
but anyway, there was the nucleus of the four of us. But
Yeah,
my vision was I didn't want to sound like anybody else,
yeah,
and that was 100% my focus. And we're gonna. I mean, this is an ADHD podcast, and we're gonna go into why that happened. I think as we go along.
yeah.
But hang on. Oh, there's another rock star just arrived. My recollection is we didn't want to sound like anybody else. Isaac, come here. Here, son. Let's just come and sit down. So just
So you
before,
don't get this in any other podcasts, do you? People's kids just rocking up and joining
he's
in.
not one of
It's
my
great.
kids anymore. He's a genuine rock
Oh,
star. Come and sit
he
down,
is, yeah.
son, just for a
He is,
second.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I did watch some of his gig. I did watch some of it. It's very good. So,
Yay! So this guy here, this is what's your name? Isaac Whitehouse, and he's just done a gig last night, and I don't know about you, but I thought he sounded really lovelier.
yeah, yeah. It's very. You can tell you've got an influence on him in the music element. Definitely the chord structures. Don't want to go too much into music, obviously, because it's an
No,
ADHD podcast. But yeah, very similar. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. But so he's the same. I mean, he's got the same vision as me. We've never discussed his vision, but you know, we went last night. It was an open mic night where you got 3 tracks. And he played. Well, we had 3 rock bands on, three big, sort of loud, rock bands.
Yeah.
1, 2,
Yeah.
3, and then Isaac came on. He did a Woody Guthrie cover, just him and an electric guitar. He did a song of his own called the Wheelbarrow Song, and he did a very gentle version of Mr. Tambourine Man. And it was like, I remember thinking this guy could absolutely fall flat on his arse here, or he's just going to blow them away. And actually, he blew them away. And but it's that whole kind of. He's got the same thing. Now, interestingly, we're saying about this whole sort of ADHD thing. We say about ADHD people that ADHD people do incredible things in incredible circumstances, but if you give them the banal, they will fail. And again, I didn't get my diagnosis till my 50s, and now I work in the field and have been for many years of neurodiversity. But I think that was the leading the I think now looking back, the ADHD absolutely was the focus for Lovelier.
Yeah. I think when you went, so obviously we lost contact and got back in contact, which was fantastic. I think when I found out that you were a TED talker and doing a lot to do with ADHD, etc., it made sense in the fact of the way that sometimes you were, but also like you say about the innovation. So all the artwork came from you, and all of the sort of we built on in the band. So you had the ideas, and we built on that and put sort of. You're right. We didn't sound like anybody else at the time because it was all Britpop, and people were covering sort of the Jam, and there was Oasis and Blur and Supergrass and all of that, and we didn't touch that at all. We were still a pop type of band, but it was 10-minute songs, and it went here, there, and everywhere. And then we'd have a really short song. I seem to remember I wrote one that was 90 seconds long.
It was called "What Would You Rather Be or a Wasp?"
That was it. That was it. That was a good song. But what would you rather be or a wasp? What would you rather be or a wasp?
I know. And it's that play on words, isn't it? And I used to find you really exciting to work with because you were so funny. You were so
I still
funny.
am.
Yeah, you are, but we just don't get to work together anymore. Yeah, and it was like that. And I think if I look back, I think what the structure was, and I think you're absolutely right. And I would hate to come across as big-headed, but just saying what happened. I would go away and I'd have an idea, but I was by far the least talented musician, by far. But I had 3 absolutely gifted musicians around me. I always said, that your drumming, you just had to. I just had to say, "Oh, can you sound like this?" If I said, "Can you sound like the bloke out the Beach Boys?" You could just do that.
Yeah.
Or if you sat, and then Jason was so. I mean, he was better than Jules Holland. He is better than Jules Holland. There's no 2 ways
He's
about it.
very talented. Yeah.
Unbelievable. The pair of you, and Martin. Martin was again, he was like, you just told him what you wanted and he just did it.
Yeah.
There was no questions, no answers. And so there was that. And I think, you know, I'll tell you what it reminded me of, not in the style of music, but um, uh, I often wonder, how did he and Jory get together with the Blockheads? The Blockheads were stunning jazz musicians, weren't they? And funk
Yeah.
musicians. And they got
Mhm.
this guy who couldn't sing, you know, in the front,
Yeah.
but he told his mad poems and stuff like that, and they set it to music for him. And I think that's what we did, a lot of that. I think we did a lot of that. So I think, yeah, definitely I was the ideas man. But you know,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
you,
I think in terms of the bit where you said you were the least talented, I don't think that's strictly true because obviously you could play the bass and still can
mm,
play the bass and have got ideas around the bass.
mm,
But I don't think you needed to be overly complicated, or it was like
no,
you set the idea and we had a bass line, and then Martin put his layers of guitar on it, and
mm,
Jason, whatever Jason did, sometimes it was all over the place, but it was good because that's what made it different.
yeah,
And then I remember there was one song, I can't remember what the song was. You said to me, because you used to stand to the left when we were rehearsing.
mm,
You were stood up and I was sat down, and you said, I want it to sound like this. And you did it with your hands. So I just followed what you did with your hands. And that's what the song sounded like. And we kept it in. So I think, yeah, with you weren't the least talented. We were a talented group. It's just you sprung the idea and we just built on it.
yeah. Well, it's very interesting as well. But because I wasn't a real, I think I wasn't a real musician either. Yeah, and and what was really fascinating about that was I've gone back and I've started listening to the stuff we did, and we had all these weird time signatures.
Oh, yeah.
There wasn't 4/4 time, was it?
No, no, no.
No,
No, we just put them in whatever suited at the time. Yeah.
yeah, and so and so we've got we've got stuff. I mean, Beverly is a waltz, ba 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 ba
Yeah,
ba
yeah.
ba 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 ba,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then there's other stuff that da da ba 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 da ba 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 ba,
Yeah.
and you go. And I was putting this stuff together, thinking that's what music sounded like.
Yeah. But it does. It does. It does.
And it was just they weren't 4/4 time sequences. What I'm saying to anyone listening is that's that four on the floor. And I think again, there's a friend of mine who wrote a book called Movers, Dreamers, and Risk Takers, and it's about ADHD. And I think it certainly for me, I love nothing more than we do those gigs, and there'd be all those Britpop bands and all those people like that, and they'd be up on and doing their stuff. And and then we'd come and be ba ba boo boo ba 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 ba, I mean, I really, my singing voice in the early days was dreadful, and
Yes, it
and
was.
yeah, and yet, it didn't seem to
But
matter.
it didn't matter because that's what made us stand out. We had
Mm,
from the other bands and
mm,
probably what you wanted now you know of your diagnosis, etc. And at
mm,
the time you didn't,
mm.
might have made you feel uncomfortable. And I don't know. That's just a question to you. Did that make you feel uncomfortable because you thought nobody kind of understands what I'm trying to do here? Because we wanted to stand out. Because yeah, we weren't like the other bands. We'd be on a list of bands who were all very similar and did all the similar sort of stuff,
Yeah.
and then we'd come on and people would go to the bar.
Yeah, they would. Yeah, they would. I did feel I was disappointed. I was really disappointed because so now the timeline is an odd timeline. So when did you
Mm.
say we got together? 97,
94,
94,
94. Yeah,
94. So 1994. I mean, my music taste was three things. It was rock and roll, like
yeah,
50s stuff. I love it, still love it now. 50s music. It was mod and soul, which I kind of
yeah,
lumped together, and and it was a certain amount of kind of electronica stuff from the
yeah, yeah,
80s,
yeah,
OMD and stuff like that.
yeah,
And that was my thing. and but I never really listened to anything else.
yeah,
And so people would. So what happened was, I think you said, "Oh, we sound like Joy Division. There's a Joy Division thing going on here." Well,
yeah,
apart from Love Will Tear Us Apart, I'd never heard Joy Division, and
yeah, yeah.
you gave me a 12-inch of Atmosphere,
Oh yeah,
and I remember thinking, this is what we've been doing for the last 2 years, yeah,
yeah,
and this
yeah, yeah,
sounds just like us, you know.
yeah, yeah.
And I mean, he couldn't sing either, you know, and he
No,
certainly
no.
couldn't play the guitar, and there's all that stuff. And then we did some gigs, and somebody says, "My God, yeah, you can see your influences, Spaceman 3." I was going, "Spaceman who?"
Yeah,
And I was listening, and of course they were still going about at that time, or their spin-off bands, and I thought, yeah, this is what we're
yeah,
doing. This is kind of there's people out there just like us, and
yeah,
and
yeah,
and, and the other one was Sid Barrett, and there was this Sid Barrett thing. People going, Sid Barrett, oh, you like Sid Barrett? Again, he couldn't sing, and he wasn't, but his lyrics were very strange and interesting. I thought, yeah, yeah, these are the guys, these are us. So I thought it wasn't as unprecedented, and in many ways, some of these bands I felt we were better than them,
yeah,
and I was disappointed that we couldn't get into that. We didn't fit into that thing, and that
yeah,
nobody sort
yeah,
of, and I didn't have the capability of writing a Britpop song.
yeah,
I don't know how. I wouldn't know how to write a four beats to the bar anything. I've just got no idea. Um, and so yeah, it was very disappointing. I mean, but but we had this thing, and it was either going to go or it was not going to go. And I think Martin had the right idea. He always felt that we would hit a certain level. He always said the Fall. We'd hit that level that the Fall were at, where we're not massive, we're not filling stadiums, but we're going for 20 odd years. And you put an album together, and then sort of tour it, and then go back to your normal lives. And I'd say, like Ben Watt now.
yeah,
Ben Watt, he's got his record company, he's got his
yeah.
DJing, he's got his everything but the girl, and he can walk down the street, nobody knows who he is, you know,
Exactly. Yeah,
but he's
yeah,
made a
yeah,
career. And I agree, we could have done that. We weren't going to be the Beatles or Elvis, but we were going to be something.
yeah.
And yeah, it's interesting. And with the ADHD, there was a boredom element as well. So for ADHD people, we're fitted with what they call a give a shitometer. You've seen my book, Andrew and the Magic Give a
Yeah.
Shitometer.
I've
Am I,
ordered your book. Yeah,
you've ordered it,
yeah. You sent me a copy. Yeah, I did pay for it as well.
did
Yeah,
you? Well done.
yeah,
Well
yeah,
done. Well,
yeah.
that whole kind of like, so if you think Lovelier, what we were together, what, 4 years?
About that. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right. And in that 4 years, the progression was massive.
yeah,
The music we were making after 4 years, the last new song we did was a thing called Do Ya. And I've played it to you recently, and it was
yeah,
a very kind of a early 70s metal sounding thing.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah,
we were at the beginning, we were doing stuff like little kind of ditties like Isaac, my son's doing now. One of the first ones we wrote was a thing called Dolly Peg, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
and it
yeah,
was a
yeah, yeah,
little kind of weird little
yeah.
ditty with funny little changes and stuff like that. And so the progression was massive,
When you
and that,
talk about those songs, now you mention it, the variety of different things that we did across
yeah,
those songs.
yeah,
So we intentionally, unintentionally borrowed a bit of Pink Floyd on 2 tracks where they
yeah,
were quite long, progressive tracks.
mm,
And then, like we said, we had tracks that were 90 seconds long, but
yeah,
there was Do You is a good example, um, because it was very it did sound, you're right, it did sound Black Sabbathy, etc., but it still
mm,
had the elements of Spaceman 3 and all of that kind of progressive kind of noise in the background and lots of cowbell and different
mm,
stuff.
yeah.
So it would have been interesting to see where we'd have gone after that, but obviously we didn't at that point.
I can remember what I was envisaging at the time. And I remember, and I still think now, I think we made a mistake. And again, I'm gonna, obviously it's an ADHD podcast, and I'm gonna bring that in. ADHD people have a thing called masking. Yeah, we all suffer with quite severe mental health problems, and we mask our emotions and we mask our feelings. And one of the ways we do that is by trying to fit in. And I think we made a mistake when, at a certain point, we tried to fit in. We tried to fit in, or I tried to fit in, because let's face it, you guys just did everything I said. I'd go, let's do this. Everyone would go, yeah, all right. And
Yeah,
and I tried to fit us into this 3 minute pop song thing. And
yeah,
so we ended up doing little gigs where we would do 10 3 minute pop songs in half an hour. And it was good and it sounded
yeah,
great. But what we were really good, what our real skill was following each other and vibing and getting a jam going. And, you know, I mean, Do
yeah,
You Again was a great example of that, because it would come to the end and then it would go, and you could just do that. And I think we had the ability, we could play a nightclub and we could have played all night just
yeah, yeah,
doing one track, just creating sound, you know.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah,
think we made a mistake of not doing that, because when we first started and we first started rehearsing, we had 30-minute songs,
yeah,
you know, and
yeah,
we would do two. We would do two, and
yeah,
they would be almost instrumental with a little bit
yeah.
of random shouting over them and stuff like that. And I think that's where our real skill lay,
So,
you
do
know.
you think that that the songs that we did that were longer and rambled and kept going and then progressed
Yeah,
was more of your mind as is now, whereas the shorter songs that you thought that needed to happen were you trying to fit into how you thought you had to act in
yeah,
society, as in I should be like, well, I should be. I should be 3 minutes long and not I should be 30 minutes long, because your brain operates in, well, I
yeah.
need to ramble over here and go over there, and not put you in those sections of 10 3 minute songs.
I do, and I genuinely think that was me trying to fit in with the rest of the music world. And I think that was the mistake. And I think some of the songs, give us audience, you know these songs. There's no real way you're going to find out what they sounded like. Maybe I'll
No,
find a way of putting some online at some point. But some of the things, uh, for example, we had a thing called Out with the Old, and we would do that, and it had the three verses, three chorus, just like everything else. And then
yeah,
it broke off, and there was a key change,
yeah,
and there
yeah,
was this thing that just went on for like, I've got the first ever version we made of it, and it's three, 20 minutes, half an hour, and it's just going on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And
yeah,
that was great. But by the time it got to being played in the clubs or the festivals or whatever we were doing, by the time it got there, we'd structured that and we'd cut it down, and it was 2 minutes
yeah,
long. And so instead of 20 minutes,
yeah,
it was 2 minutes long. And there was even a bit where we knew I would go up an octave, you would stop. That was the end of it. And I think that killed the creativity of what we were trying to do.
yeah, maybe, yeah,
And so yeah, I
yeah.
agree. But
It
then,
was
but I
definitely more fun doing those. Sorry, go on.
no, say it.
I was going to say it was definitely more fun doing the rambling,
Mm,
meandering, and then somebody would go off and do something. Martin would go off and change the whatever the pedal on his guitar, and it would turn into that bit where you said it would go on for like heavy, almost really heavy metal. It was weird because it started with a drum march, that track, and then
mm,
it finished off going up. Jason with the keyboard going off on one, and then he'd just sit down because he'd had enough. So, but
mm.
we'd carry on just to annoy him. But that meandering was the best part. And
Yeah,
yeah, you're right. In the structure of the songs was it was a bit more. Oh, well, should we do that? Especially when we went to a little all day festival, if you remember, in Kidderminster at the Market Tavern,
I do
and
remember. Yeah,
we were the first or second band on. So that was 1995. That was, and they said you got 20 minutes. So we had a set list which was about 4 or 5 songs. And I think that kind of, when we were given 20 minutes, we're like, oh God, what are we going to do? Whereas what we should have done is just gone on and played one song and then just finished after 20 minutes.
Yeah, I agree with you. I really agree with you. That was a terrible day. That I remember that day I was in a really sad mood because there was that, I forget her name, forgive me, but there was that French girl that had been murdered by a lorry driver. Do you remember?
Yes.
And
Celine Figard, her name
that was
was.
that her name. And we were on our way to the
Yeah,
gig and we drove past the police investigation site.
correct.
And you
Yes,
could
horrible.
see
Yeah,
the police through the
yeah,
big tent, and it was
yeah,
like shadow theater. And
yeah.
it was, I
Now that's
remember.
really that is really interesting because when we went by that scene, I know this is a little bit morbid, but actually might describe or explain something. Is from that, if you took that, you after that you felt sad and that played on your mind. When we drove by, I thought that's awful, and then it did sit in my head, but I didn't think too much about it. And then when we came back after that gig, I think I went out and got drunk, but I think you just went home. So it obviously sat in your head, and now that explains how certain things might affect you differently than it would for maybe me.
So in ADHD, we have all the ADHD stuff: attention deficit, hyperactivity, impulsivity, that sort of
Yeah,
stuff. And I mean,
yeah,
you know, but also it's the overthinking. And
yeah, yeah.
I just remember, I remember it bothered me the whole day. The audience was Hell's Angels, if you remember. The Hell's Angels turned up, and
Yeah.
and I was in a striped boating blazer and a little beret, which didn't help.
Yeah,
No
yeah,
worse
yeah.
than the tank top I'm wearing today. But I remember that whole gig, and I remember there was a poster of Sleeper, the band Sleeper,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and it was the lyrics to their brilliant, brilliant record, What Do I Do Now? And
okay.
and I spent the whole gig just reading the lyrics off that poster. You know,
Wow. Okay.
because it was so it well but you know, ADHD people overthink, and I didn't
Yeah.
feel I had the right to have fun when this poor young woman's body was being dug up, and
Yeah.
it's like stupid, really, because these things
Yeah.
happen, and we just happen to be driving past. Would I have felt the same if I
Yeah.
seen it on the news? Probably not. You know,
Yeah. Maybe.
you
Yeah.
know
Maybe.
the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about, though, and this is again, was drugs and alcohol,
Hmm.
and I know, um, we as a group we now well you didn't drink hardly at all, did you?
I didn't drink too much, and I never touched drugs, and I've never touched drugs, mainly because earlier that year, before we met, a friend of my brother's had passed away
Mm,
after taking too many and fell in a river and drowned.
mm,
And from that moment on, I said, I'm not getting involved in that.
no.
But we'd have a drink, and we would drink, but I don't. Yeah, I mean, I'll let you carry on with the rest of the story.
Well, no, it's okay. I know Jason was not unknown to have the odd tipple. Um,
Yeah,
he could get quite hammered, really, couldn't he, Jason?
yeah,
And
yes,
and
yeah.
s- and so could I, and I did a lot of drugs. Um, I don't think I ever showed up to a gig drunk or stoned, and I don't even think I went to rehearsal stoned or drunk.
I would say, hand on heart, complete honesty, I never saw you took a drug ever, and I wouldn't
Really?
have known, to be perfectly honest. And
Right.
if I don't think we were never when we played, we were never drunk. We might have had a pint before,
Mm.
usually because one of us had to drive. So we
Yeah.
might have had one before and then came back to Worcester and had one or two, and that
Yeah.
was it. But
Mm.
as a group, we'd go out and have a drink, and we would go out. We go to Cheltenham, spent a lot of time in Cheltenham. We go
Mm.
to Remember
Malvern.
me
You
and
used
you
to go to
going to
Malvern.
Stratford, Malvern, Stratford. Yeah, we'd spend
Yeah.
more time driving out to places to go and see
Exactly.
places and have one or two drinks and come back. But yeah, I've never that never materialised in the group at all.
Well, the reality was that behind the scenes, I was a
Yeah,
dreadful alcoholic.
yeah,
At that, I've been an alcoholic since I was 13 years old, and
hmm
I'm 57 now. And and we're back to this ADHD thing of masking. I've been
yeah.
sober now 5 years, 5 months, and
Well done.
thank you. But you know, everything could change tonight. You
Yeah,
know, so but five
yeah,
years, five months, and I was working with a really dear friend and colleague of mine, and I've been working with him for 10 years maybe, and we've been working together twice a week, really closely, doing a lot of the work that I do now. And he said to me, he said, I had no idea. I had no idea you drank. I had no
wow,
idea you took drugs. One of
yeah,
the places I work, they said, you've been coming here 7 years. I said, yeah, and I was pissed for two of those. And,
wow,
you know,
wow.
that's not
Yeah,
strictly true because I was an evening drinker,
yeah,
and I was so I was hungover for two of those, I would say. And
wow.
so, but they're back to that ADHD thing. We're good at masking stuff.
Yeah,
We're
yeah, yeah.
really, really. There were occasions. There was one night when I was with you and our dear old friend Jenny Pickles, and we were at my flat in Park Avenue, and I drank a whole bottle of whiskey.
Oh
Do
wow.
you,
Don't remember that at all.
do you not? Do you not?
No, no, no,
Well, you
no, no,
two,
no.
I passed out, and you two put me to bed,
Oh,
and I think you decided you should stay in case I was sick or anything like
oh,
that.
that was good
And
of us.
yeah, yeah, it was nice. And I woke up
Yeah.
in the middle of the night, came in and woke you all up and going, I'm back. So,
Oh God, that's
so
when
it
we
was
ran
all
out.
going on, and it was all going on at the time. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, so it was, yeah, and there was a lot of acid, lot of speed, lot of
yeah.
smoke in the pot,
Never saw any of that at all.
And
That never came into the band. Never
mm,
saw that at work. Never saw that if we were out having a drink. Never saw that. So
mm.
yeah, you must, like you say, you're masking. You must
Yeah,
have done
completely masking.
masked it very well, even though you didn't know you were ADHD at that point. You
Yeah.
still have the masking element of
Well,
that.
having that name ADHD, um, having that name of ADHD,
Mhm.
was very interesting because it just explained everything. Because
Yeah,
you're still ADHD if you're not diagnosed. If you've got cancer, you've still got cancer, even though,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
even though you're not diagnosed. And that was the interesting thing that as soon as I got my diagnosis, I was that it? Was that what it's all? So I'm not mad. I'm not
yeah,
crazy
yeah,
because I mean,
yeah,
in the
yeah.
band, I had a real reputation for being a nutter, didn't I?
Yes. Yes, I think, and that manifested itself in the artwork of the
Mm,
posters and things. We were like, oh, we need some artwork for this gig we've got coming up, and you were like, I'll leave it to me. And then we turn up, and there would be this picture of a spaceship with us hanging out of it, waving, looking like a 5-year-old had drawn it. And we're like,
yeah,
oh yeah, let's stick that on. And the word "lovelier" always had like little daisies on it.
yeah.
So everything was complete, nothing matched. It was
No,
pink paper, lovelier with daisies on. That little picture with the spaceship or the train, with us
yeah,
waving out the back of the train and the smoke going choo choo, and
yeah,
then it was like a different font at the bottom saying where we were playing, etc. But they stood out because everything else was the same. It was all Britpop
Well,
style
what
wording,
what
etc. But ours always looked better.
what I've always craved is safety and security. Yeah,
Yeah.
and those pictures were all about we'll take you to a little magical place called Lovelier.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it was a real genuine sort of mission behind that. Everyone, let's face it, everyone wants to be their inner child.
yeah,
And that idea that, yeah, come with us and nothing bad will happen where we are,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you can come on our little train I mean, even now, Dan, wouldn't you love to get on one of those little trains you put
Choice
50
trains.
pence in and rock
Yeah,
forward,
yeah, yeah,
you know? And that was
yeah,
the idea, you know? And I think we had that kind of, I mean, do you know one of the things I love best about being in that group? We were friends.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
you know, it was, you know, I would not even consider going for a pint without ringing the other three.
Yeah.
So,
And that we did. We were out all the time. I would say we were out all the time.
yeah.
If we were going out, we went out as a four. We
Mm,
never. It was very rare that any of us would just go out without each other. It was like, oh yeah, let's go. Especially after a practice, let's go here. I
yeah.
remember you were like, I was like, what one night I was when you did drink, I said, what do you want to drink? And you said, oh, I'll have a pint of Maniac soup, please. Like, what is Maniac soup? Well, it's Grolsch, but you called it Maniac soup.
That's
I
because
mean, I
it was
think
so
we even thought
strong.
about calling a song that at some point, but it was just Grolsch because it was strong lager, wasn't it? It's like
Yeah,
5%.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It
Yeah,
was like,
that
oh,
was
let's have
there
it was
was
good.
funny thing was back in those days as well. We were so close that in my
Yeah,
flat, nobody knocked the door.
yeah, yeah,
You just come in. And
yeah, yeah.
I can remember Martin sitting in my front room. I was in the kitchen and I was getting a drink, a coffee or something like that. And I came
Yeah.
out and Martin was on my settee eating a Battenberg cake. And I went, hello, Martin. And he went, do you want some Battenberg? And I was
Brilliant,
like, yes, please.
brilliant. Yeah.
You know, and it was kind of like that. And I think, again, when I look back, and again, it's all the ADHD. I had no boundaries.
Yeah,
I had no boundaries, you know. And so when I hear about these groups like the Sex Pistols and the Rolling Stones all hating each other, I
yeah,
remember thinking, God, we were so lucky. We actually loved each other. We cared about
yeah,
each
yeah, yeah.
other.
It was good. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you know, and there was. I don't think we ever annoyed each other, even.
Well, no, because we were there and we enjoyed like our rehearsals weren't right. This song, this song, this song, this song.
Mm,
Somebody would just start playing something and you just carry on. It didn't matter if it was a song we'd written or it was just something you were thinking about, or you
mm.
literally just stood. And we could end up jamming for half an hour before we knew we were going to actually do some of the songs we were going to play the next week. It's like, oh yeah, let's just do that for a bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, do you know what's interesting is, do you know that Oscar Schindler was ADHD? I talk about this on everything.
Was he?
Yeah,
Was he? Didn't I?
yeah, and you know, and one of the things he said was when you talk to him about when he saved all those Jewish lives from the Holocaust, he always said I could have done better, and he could have saved more, which is nonsense. You know, he did plenty. He really
Yeah,
did an
yeah,
incredible thing, but I was a perfectionist with Lovelier. I remember
yeah,
that, and I remember, and that's that whole must do better. We
yeah,
got to do better, and you know, and it was very interesting because my bass playing went from absolutely non-existent to by the end actually very very good, you know.
yeah,
And it
yeah,
was, and I listen to stuff now, and I go, that bass player's good. He's really
yeah,
good, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
And there was that perfectionism. I'm just going to tell you something that you might not know. So a few ADHD people in rock and roll. Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols is
Oh well,
ADHD. Now
yeah,
Steve Jones learned to play guitar in a weekend,
wow,
you know, and now he's a
yeah,
very in-demand session player. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
he's been on Dylan albums playing. You know, I
You
mean, he's
really? Wow, didn't know that.
yeah,
Yeah,
top end bass player. You know, really. Was it? He was with. I'll tell you who he was with for a little while. I think it might have been someone like Prefab Sprout or someone like that.
wow.
You know, and so
Yeah,
Steve Jones from the Pistols. Did you know David Bowie was ADHD?
no,
How much
no.
creativity would you like? The Sex
Well,
Pistols and
exactly.
David
Yeah.
Bowie.
I mean, that makes perfect sense now because his career, if you listen to different albums, hops all over the place,
Mm,
particularly with Hello, is it Hello Spaceman or Hello
yeah,
Spaceboy, whichever album that was, that, it was everything was everywhere, wasn't it? And
yeah,
like that's you think trajectory wise, obviously we'd have never reached that level, but to have that creative level would have been fantastic to carry on for years.
Well, I mean, he talks openly about his ADHD, and what he did say was that he's not consistent. He was not consistent.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's the way we'd have gone. I certainly didn't like the fact that if we did anything the same. And again, and when we take those very, very early things and those very, very later things,
Yeah.
there was a big progression. John Lennon, I am adamant John Lennon was ADHD, and he did all those avant-garde albums
Yeah. Yeah.
of just noises and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then he would go out and he'd go, right, I'm gonna, he did that Plastic Ono Band album where he took Phil Spector, who was the guy who did the biggest productions ever at the time, and he said, I want you to do a stripped down album with 3 musicians.
Yeah.
And there was
Yeah.
literally just him, Klaus Vormann, and Ringo. And he just said, yeah, that's what I want you to do. And it's about pushing that. And I mean, I remember saying to you something. I said, why don't you do this? And you said, there's 2 drummers on this. I said, yeah, you'll be all right.
2 drummers, 2 drummers.
Yeah. I played you something and you went, there's 2 drummers. And I said, I want the drums to sound like this. And you went, there's 2 drummers. And I went, wow, you'll be all right, You just and you were, of course you were, because you were Dan. And
I think there was a track which for me explains a lot about your ADHD at the time.
Yeah.
And it was a track that we had. I don't know if you remember it. You might have it on one of the recordings. It was called Wishes for Nobody.
Oh, yeah.
And besides the bass line, everything else wasn't in time. So you were like, do not play the drums in a constructive time, if that makes sense. So I used to have the roto toms and I had 3 floor toms and my snare. And you were like, this track cannot, it had to stand out as having no time construct. So fine. So throughout the whole song, and then that went into probably one of the most poppy songs that we had, which was I think it was called Time, which was a piano-led ballad, and Jason sang it. And the 2 opposites now make perfect sense of what was going on in your head about it had to be, different. Everything had to be different. You couldn't have 2 songs that were the same. It needed to sound very different. And then I think we went off and played that Careful With Your Axe, Eugene sort of spin-off song at the end, which it fully explains everything.
Well, it's funny you should say that as well, because I can remember that, and the influence for that, was Keith Moon. And the idea was, I'd heard something Keith had done, and he often didn't play in time.
Never.
And I mean, real drummers like yourself, but not you because you're a big Keith fan, aren't you? But a lot of professional drummers don't like him.
Yes, they don't.
No, they don't. They don't think he's very good.
Yeah.
I've got a friend who's a professional. You remember Simon?
Yeah.
He can't stand Keith Moon's playing.
That's because he's a Ringo fan.
He's a Ringo fan. Yeah, but that idea. But also, what is fascinating again, if you've gone full circle, is Keith Moon was clearly ADHD.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When you read the books about him and the stories from other people about him, and his behaviour and what he did, and he didn't stick to there was no day or night to him. It was just time when Keith was awake and time when Keith was asleep. So he must have been off the scale in that respect.
I think he most definitely was, and and he did drink himself to death ultimately.
He did, sadly.
And I don't know if you know, but I did get to a point. What the breaking point for my drinking was that I was actually out with Simon, and I don't drink a lot of beer, but I was drinking a lot of wine at that time. and I was drinking a large 250 ml glass of white wine to his pint. So you can imagine. And I
Wow.
drank so much, went back to my hotel, woke up the next morning, and I was supposed to be delivering a workshop, and my feet were so swollen that I couldn't get my shoes on.
How?
And anyway, I delivered the workshop with no shoes on. You
Oh
know,
God.
this is rock bottom stuff, mate. This
Yeah,
is
yeah,
really
yeah.
rock bottom. And anyway, I was a scout leader at the time, and I went on a scout camp. And one of my best pals in scouting was a GP, and I told him what had happened, and I was laughing. And he
Mhm.
said, "Actually, you'd gone into chronic liver failure." And he said,
Wow.
one more drink could have been the one that killed you, because your
Yeah,
body had stopped absorbing the alcohol
yeah,
and was
yeah,
spreading it around your body. I don't know how it works. And that was when it had to stop. That's when it all had to
yeah,
stop.
yeah.
Interestingly, going through with that is, you know, creativity wise, um, I've got better.
Oh, wow. Well, that's good
It,
because
you
clear
know,
head.
it's not the drugs, you know, it's not the
Yeah,
drugs, you know. And
yeah,
again, back to Ringo always said that, didn't he? Stone's music is shit music,
yeah,
you know, and that was it. But
yeah.
I do remember sort of trying to sort of make everything. I remember going through one of the songs, I think it was Out with the Old, going through every line, reading every line, and making sure that none of them rhymed. And if you go through that song, nothing rhymes.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
one line rhymes. And I thought
yeah.
that's
Wow.
you know, let's just keep people on their toes. If it were a rap, it
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
rhyme,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know. And so
Exactly.
I
Yeah,
wanted that, and that was kind of interesting. But you know, it's the other thing where I was fortunate, and you know, again from the book, there's a chapter in the book called the Marmite Effect, where I talk about the fact that people either really, really do not like me, or they really, really do care about me. And
yeah,
and it's an ADHD thing. We aren't popular people, but what was confidence building for me was you three really did like me,
yeah,
and
yeah. We did.
yeah, and I could do anything I wanted, and you'd go, "It's okay. He knows what he's doing." So you didn't just
Yeah,
like me; you trusted me.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and
We did. I think.
that
Well,
was.
we all trusted each other, but yeah, I mean, yeah.
But for
In terms of the
me,
music, yeah,
with the underlying mental health issues,
yeah,
you know, with those underlying mental health, it meant a hell of a lot. It meant a hell of a lot. And so, you know, these were things that were unspoken at the time because I
yeah,
thought I
yeah,
was mad.
yeah,
I thought I was mad. When I got my diagnosis of
yeah,
ADHD, the first thing I went was, thank God I'm not mad.
yeah, yeah. I can imagine. Yeah,
You know, I'm not mad. It's okay. You know,
yeah.
I bought this tank top. I thought it was great. It's modelled on the one Paul McCartney wears in the Magical Mystery Tour. And and I bought this tank top, and my wife, my lovely, lovely, beautiful wife, yeah, she says to me, "You can't wear that, you know. Why not?"
Well, it's
And
a
I just
podcast. Nobody will see it.
nobody will see it.
I can see it.
Yeah.
I can tell everybody it's a representation of Andy's brain.
But that's you know, and I put this tank top on. She was like, "You can't wear." And people say, "Oh, you dress eccentrically." I can remember turning out to a band
Yeah,
practice, or it might have been a
yeah.
gig, in a full-length fake fur coat. Can you remember that?
Yes, you did. Yes, 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 I do. Yes. Uh, was it black or white? I can't
It was
remember. I
very,
think.
very dark brown, or it might have been black.
Yeah. Yes, I remember. And I think at that point you had dyed your hair blonde as well.
Well, actually, your mum, God rest her soul, your
She
mum had
did.
dyed
Yeah.
my hair blonde.
She
Yeah, she
did.
used to
Yeah, she
do me
did.
about once a month. Your mum used to
Yeah,
bleach
yeah,
my hair for me.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It
yeah,
was a good
and do
look.
my laundry.
Yeah, it
Um,
was a good look.
yeah, it was all right. Yeah, bleached blonde hair and a
Yeah, yeah.
full-length black fake fur coat. Yeah,
Just for a practice on a Tuesday night.
yeah. But do you know what? I always say to people, "Is that eccentric? I bought it in a shop, just like you would have done."
Yeah, yeah.
and
Yeah,
I couldn't
exactly.
tell, and I
Yeah,
couldn't find I couldn't find the mathematical sequencing that said why. They still do it to me now. Well, I'm only going to bloody Primark, or you know,
yeah,
why, guys, you look a bit crazy, Well, it's a pair
yeah,
of boots I bought in a Dr. Martin shop and something I bought in
yeah,
Primark.
yeah, yeah. It's
Um,
just the same as everybody else. It just looks slightly different. Makes no difference.
yeah, but then when the diagnosis came, I oh, okay, some kind of
Yeah,
sensory thing. So
yeah,
so we've oh, it's so lovely to speak to you. Do you know when we played at my wedding, which was such
yeah,
fun. Um,
yeah. It was good fun.
well, did I send you pictures of that?
Yes, you did. You sent me pictures, and I think there was a video as well. So yes, yeah, it was good.
Oh, good. And
It was good. I'll tell you what, we hadn't played together for 26 years, and
mm,
we literally got straight back into it. It was
it was
like,
like
oh yeah,
that,
I
wasn't
remember
it?
how this goes, and it was like that, and it was great. It was great fun, and we are going to do it again. Just nobody knows when, so it'll be a surprise for everybody when we get together to do something noisy and I can't think of the word, dangerous.
Noisy, dangerous, and innovative, and exciting, and probably a little
Yes,
bit rubbish. But
yeah,
but it's what is interesting is that both of my sons are ADHD, and both of my sons are good musicians.
yeah,
Isaac, who you saw earlier, he was gigging last night and absolutely blew the lid off the place. Absolutely, so it's good. It's good that you know, and actually, there is talk which you've not been included in to say that he may be our guitarist if we can't
oh,
tempt Martin
fantastic.
back
Yeah, yeah.
if we can't tempt Martin back into the fold, he
We
might
can
be
always
ours.
have two.
Yeah, yeah, we could always have. That was always you, you see. You're always the level-headed one.
Yeah.
You're always the level.
There you go. You see, that's why we work together well.
Oh, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But I always said, I loved playing drums with you, playing with you, playing the drums, and I think we had a connection, and we still have a connection. At the wedding, the funny thing was
Yeah,
that I was playing and I kept looking back at you and I just couldn't take my eyes off you because
yeah.
it was so magical. And at the end, I told Jason, he said, I was the same. He said, I kept looking it down. He said, I couldn't stop myself looking it down. And so it was kind of, it was so, right. I suppose
It was
we've come to
great.
the end. You're in your lunch break. It's beautiful to see you. Thank you so much for
Yes,
coming along. I'll let you know
and you. Yeah.
when we get it online.
No, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, joy, a
Yeah,
joy. Just you are joy
yeah.
in its very
All good.
joyfulness. Um, so we will get together, and when we
Next
record
time
some,
we'll get Jason on with us. In
yeah,
episode 28, we'll get Jason with us. And,
yeah,
he can roast him on it as well.
yeah, that'll be
Yeah.
so beautiful. Right. I'm going to let you get back to work. Everybody, thanks for listening in if you do. And remember, you can follow me on Instagram. It's Andrew W SEN. Andrew W, like when your mum writes a label in your shirt. Andrew W SEN. And it's andrewwhitehouse.co.uk is the website. Thank you again for Dan Brown, one of the world's most beautiful people, and certainly one of the people I love the most. Dan, we'll see you next time, buddy.
Bless you.
Take
Yeah.
care, my
Take
old mate.
care. Thanks ever so much.
See you later.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.